Thank you for the introduction. Since there was a lot of raising hands, so let's try it. How many of you are here that are students or teachers from this university? Not many. I expected more. Anyway, it's a really nice place you have here. I actually studied at the Slovak University of Technology, something similar in Bratislava, but our building was nowhere as nice as this one.
Okay. Right now I work here. This is ESET's Security Research Laboratory. This particular room we call Houston. You can probably guess why. But I'll speak more about the virus lab at the end of my presentation. You can also ask any questions that you're interested in. Today we'll be talking about some interesting cases of malware, some examples that we have been dealing with in the not so recent past. I chose these four examples for several reasons. One, that they were all active in the year 2012, and they all stood out from the herd somehow. They were interesting for some particular reason. As you can see from the prefixes, they're examples of malware that target various platforms. We'll be talking about Android, about OS X, of course, about Windows stuff. This ACAT/malware, that's an AutoCAD word. It runs on Windows, but it's something that we don't see so much. We don't see it very often. So we have quite a number of topics to touch. Not too much time, so let's get to it. Okay, here. Well, one thing that I wanted to add about these, as you probably are, all are pretty technically savvy. I don't need to explain what types of malware there are, the differences between viruses and worms. And we all obviously know the motives of the attackers, that whereas 20, 30 years ago it was some hacker sitting down in the basement trying to program a virus, infect some computers, and when he accomplished that, he was happy about it. He would brag to his friends, and he would somehow impress others, and it would be good for his ego. But apart from that, he didn't really make any money from this. Nowadays, it's all about money. So the attackers that are trying to steal either money directly or steal information, they're trying to offer their services for sale. The botnets, various services sold on underground forums and stuff like that. In the recent couple of years, we have also started seeing slightly differently motivated attackers. Whereas the typical regular malware that we've been fighting about 3 decades now, it's malware, viruses, worms, trojans, whose ultimate goal is to infect as many computers as possible, because the more computers they infect, the more revenue they can get, the more information they can steal, the more money they can steal. And they were trying to spread actively and try to infect as many computers, as many victims as possible. On the other hand, we have different types of attackers, which are carrying out targeted attacks, and there the situation is very different. They are, and also trying to find out about these cases is not so easy, because it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, and if the attack is carried out well, we might not ever find out about it, actually. But yeah, so nowadays I wouldn't say that that it's a majority. Of course, it's always the less prevalent type of attack. But we are seeing more and more of it in the recent times. Malware that are only trying to infect one particular target, one particular highly ranking manager in some company to steal company information or whatever. So the first two examples actually are examples of some kind of targeted attacks, semi-targeted attacks. They did spread quite massively, but they weren't. But they had a very specific agenda, very specific Well, so let's take a look at that. The Görbot case was an example of a targeted attack. It targeted several citizens in the state of Georgia, in the country of Georgia. We are processing many thousands of malware binaries daily, and for the malware to end up in a presentation like this, it has to stand out. It has to catch our attention somehow. Görbot caught our attention by being very targeted. We were seeing detections of this malware mainly in one particular region, that was Georgia. So when we looked at our telemetry, we saw that over 75% of our reported detections came from this one country. And also when we analyzed the code in more depth, we saw that it was connecting to a URL, which was a domain of the Georgian government. Now that's of course something that you don't see every day. So we started looking into this, we started investigating, and we found some pretty interesting results. It was a spy Trojan. A spy Trojan, just like many others. Maybe you have heard about Finfisher, which is a widely documented case used by the Egyptian government. In Germany, there was the Bundestrojaner, something that the German government was responsible for. Okay, we started looking into this. What was behind this attack? It was a typical spy Trojan created to steal various types of information. An infected host could be robbed of any file from his hard drive. It has specific functions for stealing certificates, for stealing remote desktop configuration files. This was actually quite interesting because once the system is infected and the attacker has remote access to a system like this, and they steal the RDP configurations, they can, without any exploit whatsoever, they can use this and connect remotely to the computer and have ultimate access to everything that they need. There was the functionality of searching the hard drives for Microsoft Word documents according to specific keywords, and this was actually the most used functionality of the bot. And it also had the capability of doing screenshots, of turning on and recording audio using the microphone or video using the webcam. So when we analyze it, it's just like 90%, over 90% of all the malware out there, it forms some kind of a botnet. I probably don't need to introduce that term, but the reason why most malware nowadays form some kinds of botnets, because once the attackers have actually accomplished infecting the system, and they want to leverage as much as possible from this infection. So they don't want it to be a one-time thing. They want to ensure persistency on the system, and they want to ensure that they will be able to send commands to the bot and to exfiltrate data out of the infected system. And also these botnets, they can be their services can be sold on different forums and so on and so forth. So this Görbot, it had hard-coded URLs to different CNC servers. They were hosted in several different countries. Nothing particularly interesting about that. But what was interesting was the fallback mechanism. I mentioned the domain of the Georgian website, so that was used as the primary CNC server, but it was used as a fallback mechanism. So once the bot was unable to connect to one of the CNC servers that it was supposed to connect to, it would ask the fallback server, which was, it would ask the websites of the Georgian government to give them a new address, a new URL for a CNC server. This is what it looks like. This is the web page of the Georgian government. That, I don't know if you can read that. It's ema.gov.ge. Not only was this used as a fallback mechanism for the CNC server, but it was also used as an infection method. So people got infected by this bot through a drive-by download. Their website was hacked. Some malicious script was added to the website, and using exploits, their system could end up infecting without the victim even knowing it. This is actually the URL that the bot was querying. And it would look between these two characters, and that's the IP address of the new CNC server. So very, very clearly visible over there, the use of a Georgian government website. Through our investigation, we got access to the command and control server, to one of them. We were able to see CNC panel. So this is an administrative interface to control the botnet. And over here, there's a history of the different commands that were sent to the bots. So they were sent individually to each bot, and there weren't actually many infections. I think only about a couple hundred Georgian victims. But what was interesting was that each victim was sent commands directly, so it wasn't broadcasted to all of them. And as I said, the functionality that was used the most was the searching for various Microsoft Word documents according to some keywords. And the keywords were such as this. So straight in the face, obvious, some kind of espionage with keywords. Many three-letter abbreviations of institutions such as FBI, CIA, FSB, KGB, and stuff like that. So, of course, this enabled many people to speculate and to make various theories about who could have been behind this attack. And then, actually very recently, I think it was this month in November, the Georgian government, the Georgian CERT, they released a white paper about the results of their investigation. After we have discovered this, we informed the Georgians about the case, and they were very well aware of what was going on. And yeah, they were very quick to blame the Russians. This is an example of one newspaper article. According to the white paper that they released, you can take a look at it on their website, and they show the story of the investigation, how the web servers got infected, hacked, or whatever. But the most interesting part is actually what they did. I said that each victim, each bot client was controlled individually, and the attacker manually connected to these bots and tried to steal some sensitive data from these victims. So what these guys did is that they planted zip file, which was named Georgian NATO agreement, something that would be interesting for the attacker to steal. They actually archived a copy of the Gearbot installer. So they ended up infecting the bot master with his own creation, and since they already had access to the bot panel, they were able to see what he was doing. And if we scroll down there, they were able to take screenshots, video capture of the guy. So there was some guy looking like Borat behind his computer with these nice curtains, hacking away and trying to steal information from Georgians. Quite interesting. I don't know about here in Slovakia. Such action that these guys did would be illegal, but I guess it's live by the sword, die by the sword, right? Okay, another case, Ikan Medra. This was a very interesting discovery, and it caught our attention due to the fact that it was so widely spread. Every now and then we do these top 10 malware detected in some particular region, some country, or some continent. So our Latin American colleagues were doing these statistics for Peru. And in the top you can see the typical stuff that's being detected in autorun used by worms in order to spread through USB sticks exploiting Windows autorun. The configure, which is crazy but it's still so prevalent even though Microsoft has patched the vulnerabilities that it exploited many years ago, which is a clear indication that people aren't patching their systems, updating their systems properly, and the worm is still able to replicate. So this is the typical stuff that we were expecting to see, but we were definitely not expecting to see an AutoCAD worm so high in the statistics. Now we saw AutoCAD worms before, but their detection counts, they were a couple of, there were single digits or a couple of tens detected. When we saw it in 8th place, we were actually even questioning, okay, we need to check our servers to see if it's not a mistake, but no, it was not a mistake. And I can measure really got so widespread. So we looked deeper, and it was something that was starting in Peru specifically. It also got out into the region, some other South American countries, the USA and China, but apart from that, nowhere else in the world. So it was very targeted. The same graph, but in a pie chart, you can see that the detection counts in Peru contributed to over 96% of all global detections. So okay, we asked ourselves, okay, so we probably have some targeted attack going on, and we started investigating further. We analyzed the malware, exactly what it was designed to do. And it was actually not a coincidence that Peru was so high in the statistics, because the way this thing was spreading was that the attacker planted this again on an official Peruvian website, which hosted an AutoCAD template, which was supposed to be used by designers who wanted to do business with this Peruvian institution. So every contractor, every designer was supposed to download this template, and the attacker managed to add a copy of the ACAD Mentor worm along that template, which led to many AutoCAD designers being infected with the worm. So once they ran this piece of code, thanks to a feature in AutoCAD, this auto-run functionality, it would automatically install itself. It would copy itself to various locations on the hard drive, ensuring that it would be run every time the infected victim would load some AutoCAD control item. And then we analyzed what it was doing. As you can probably guess, it was no surprise, it was stealing every opened AutoCAD blueprint, AutoCAD project, and sending it somewhere. It actually used a very trivial method. It was sent directly by email using SMTP. When we looked at the decompiled code, we saw the arrays of email addresses that were used as the SMTP senders and for authentication. Now what's interesting is that this was possible in Peru because the Peruvian ISPs aren't blocking port 25 for outbound traffic. So I don't know about here, but in many other parts of the world, this attack would not be possible. And here are some pictures of, again, screenshots from the code, how it was composing the email. You can see the port there. This is the email address hard-coded. That's one address, and the originating address was picked from this list. Authentication, and as an attachment, you would get here's the email ready to be sent, and over here is the basics before encoded AutoCAD project. Now once that we knew what was the infection vector, where it was most widely spread, and what this malware was actually designed to do, we were asking ourselves the question, how successful were these guys in their operation? Since we had access to to the email accounts by cooperation with the ISPs, with the webmail providers, QQ.com. Now QQ.com and another one, 163.com, are 3 email providers in, try to guess where? In China. So this malware was designed to steal every opened AutoCAD project and steal it to a free email account somewhere in China. So after taking a look at the collecting addresses, the collecting accounts, we got to see how massive the campaign was and how successful these guys were. The accounts contained over 107,000 stolen projects, and the accounts were actually full. The accounts that were sending the harvested information were literally full and were unable to send more messages out. There was such a great amount of them. So we did not take a look at the stolen intellectual property. We looked at the amount. So it's hard to say whether these guys actually got what they were looking for, whether they were looking for some one particular thing, and this all got stolen by accident, or if they were trying to steal whatever they could steal. That we'll probably never know, but we can see that this was industrial espionage on a very massive scale. So now you have a potential answer to the question why the Chinese have patented the iPhone even before Apple has announced it. Just joking. Okay. OS X Flashback. OS X Flashback is probably to date the most serious Mac threat that we have encountered. In May last year, you probably heard of Mac Defender, which caused a lot of stir in the news. It was a rogue antivirus, and it was very widely spread. It wasn't the first rogue AV for Mac, but it was definitely the most widespread one. And Apple support engineers were getting complaints and calls for the support centers. The volume of the calls was 4 or 5 times higher than usual, and most of the queries that they were getting, most of the phone calls, were about how to uninstall Mac Defender. But that was a typical fraud trying to sell a rogue antivirus. This actually was something more serious in terms also of prevalence. This was more widely spread, and also in threat level. This was a much more sophisticated type of threat. So before talking about what it was designed to do, let's talk about how it was spreading and infecting the Macs. So in the early versions, they were pretending to be identical copy of an Adobe Flash installation. It looked like this. And the attackers, they were basically abusing the fact that the OS X system didn't come with this software pre-installed. So typical social engineering going on here, masquerading as something, a Trojan that's masquerading as something that it's not. Then another similar method came by. These self-signed Java applets. They looked like they were signed by Apple, but of course they were self-signed. Again, it required the user confirmation for the software to run, which is what many people were saying. Okay, this threat is not serious because the user needs to click allow. But then these guys they upped their ante and they started using Java exploits, and the more recent and developed variants, they no longer needed any user interaction, and they were using exploit kits. They were exploiting especially this vulnerability in Java, and were able, through drive-by downloads, infect a victim without any user interaction. Once the user was infected, typical malware like we were seeing in Windows for many years now, it had typical botnet capability. what it was designed to do, it had a downloader component, so once the attackers infected the Mac, they could download any other malware executable, so their possibilities were pretty much endless. But from what we were seeing is that the code was intercepting HTTP and HTTPS traffic. It would do it through a pretty sophisticated technique. It would do low-level hooking of the networking libraries, and it was able to intercept the traffic. I also included HTTPS. It was able to eavesdrop, intercept this traffic after or before it was encrypted, so they would get a clear text view of the communication. And what they were using it mostly for was for supplying advertisements, ad injection. So in the streams, they would inject some HTML ads, and they were also able to modify results of search engines. So whenever they would detect that somebody was looking something up on Google or some other search engine, they would be able to modify the results according to whatever some evil advertising company paid them to do. It was interesting, as I said, many different versions of Flashback were recorded. The malware was pretty well coded. There was some obfuscation. The code was encrypted using the hardware unique ID of the Mac. So it was really not that easy to analyze all the samples, because in order to decrypt the code, we would need to know the unique hardware ID of the Mac. It had some AV detection methods. So whenever some AV on the Mac was detected, it would just shut down to avoid any suspicion, to stay under the radar. It also had some anti-VM tricks to avoid being run on virtual machines. It had an interesting dynamic domain generation technique. It had a couple of static domains which were registered, but it would try to contact its CNC server on domains which were generated on a daily basis through this interesting generation technique. And this was actually the reason which we as researchers were able to monitor the botnets and set up sinkholes, because the attackers, since the domain generation was dynamic, they have not registered all the possible domains for the CNC servers. So what researchers also in ESET and also in other companies did was that they registered these domains and they set up sinkholes or honeypots, which then the bots, infected bots, were connecting to, and we got a better idea of how many clients were infected by this Trojan. And from there came the number of about 600,000 infected Macs. Twitter. That was also has to do with the CNC communication. So that was another fallback mechanism that they did. They also generated the CNC domains dynamically in the binary. They also generated this Twitter hashtag if all the other methods were unsuccessful. And they would, the malware, the bot would search according to this Twitter hashtag where the attacker would inform the client of the new CNC URL. So yeah, pretty sophisticated software malware on every platform that we're seeing. As far as the Android situation is concerned, just a very quick overview, because this would be for a presentation of its own. So just an overview of all the different kinds of Android malware things that we are seeing. When I was looking at stuff from our virus collection, I was trying to categorize them somehow. One category is SMS Trojans. They appeared on Android in about 2010, but they were prevalent on other mobile platforms many years before that, such as Symbian, for example. So basically a Trojan which is sending SMS messages to a premium rate number, which ends up in the victim getting a really high telephone bill and the attacker raking in profits. Adware, just like in regular desktop malware, also in the mobile world, especially on Android where the model is, you all know what it's like. If you want to use a free application, you will have to endure the ads that are there. Most of the times it's okay, but other times the advertisement is aggressive and goes over the boundaries of what we can consider okay, and it will be flagged as aggressive adware. There's classic malware. There's Android stuff that forms botnets, can be controlled remotely, can steal sensitive information from the device. And we all know that nowadays we are storing lots of sensitive lots of sensitive data on our smartphones. There's exploits through which the malware can get root access and do pretty much anything on the phone. And a category pretty much of its own, or it could be classified into the classic malware, but this is Trojans which are specifically targeting banking. So there's, you probably know the most famous banking Trojans such as Zeus and SpyEye. They also have their mobile counterparts where banks, of course, they know about the vulnerabilities and they try to secure their systems by some kind of two-factor authentication. There's grid cards, there are various calculators, smart cards, whatever. There's also MTANs, so you get authentication SMS on your mobile device. If your mobile device is affected by Bitmode as SpyEye in the mobile or Zeus in the mobile, this mobile malware will be forwarding these SMS messages to the attacker so he can log into your online banking and rob your bank account. And recently some rogue mobile banking applications as well, which look like this. When we look at the telemetry, this is the situation. You can't probably see the axis very well, but it's in the past 12 months. So you can see that especially in the beginning of this year, spring, the threats on these platforms were have gotten more serious. So before it was like we were getting prepared, we were expecting this stuff, but the amount of detections wasn't so high. But nowadays, we are seeing tens of thousands of detections every day. To sum up the presentation with a little bit of bad news, our friends at Group IB, they're doing a report every year trying to estimate the amount of money these bad guys are making. So for the year 2010, that was about $7 billion US. In 2011, the amount has almost doubled. It was 12.5 billion. It's almost the end of the year. In spring, we are expecting to see the reports for 2012. So I'm wondering what the numbers will look like then. The good news, on the other hand, is by analyzing all this malware, we are seeing that they're exploiting either vulnerabilities in the systems. So in order to protect ourselves, we should keep our systems patched and up to date. This will lower the chances of the attackers very, very much. And apart from this, they are exploiting vulnerabilities in humans. So they're using social engineering to try to trick users into deliberately willingly install the malware on their systems. So by some a little bit of user education and using some common sense, many people can avoid being infected in the first place. So that's the virus lab as I promised. I don't know how I'm doing on time. What we do there, our primary objective, of course, is to work on detection. So we are doing detection signatures for the malware. A detection signature, you can think of something like a description of a behavior, an algorithm that is describing a set of samples. So we are trying to do them as generic as possible. So with one single signature, we can target thousands of different variants that the malware authors are releasing. But the skill, the art in doing this, what our researchers have to keep in mind is to know where to draw the line, where to balance it. Because if you do the signature too broad, too generic, then there is a greater risk of having false positives. So it's basically carefully picking up the detection signature and knowing how to balance these things. It's very easy to create an antivirus that will detect 100% of all malware. You can accomplish that simply if you do an antivirus that will detect every single file, right? You won't miss anything. But such an antivirus won't be very useful, will it? So this is what we are dedicating most of our time to. Whenever something either interesting pops up or either something problematic, then it's sent to a different group of analysts. Some of these guys that are seen behind these computers, they can spend some more time analyzing the stuff in greater detail. They can spend hours or even days on one malware, one family, and we are looking in depth into some of the things that I was talking about in the beginning, and we also do some investigations, try to find out who are the bad guys behind this, etc., etc. Of course, there's a lot of automation that has to be done in order to process such a huge amount of malware. Nowadays, we are seeing over 200 unique binary malicious files every single day that we have not yet seen. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Do I have time for questions?
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have 2 minutes left, and we promised to answer some questions. We can pick some of them, and of course, you can answer them later in written.
Yeah. If I don't have time to answer stuff, you can either ask them on my email. You can check out the blog.
Yeah, we have a dedicated Facebook page for that, and we would be happy if you answer those questions there, because everyone could see the answers. Okay. Okay, but you have 1.5 minutes. So.
Ever been tempted to write a virus? No, and I don't recommend it to anyone if you're thinking of wanting to be employed in an antivirus company or in the security industry. I don't recommend it because your chance of being employed will drop to 0. Such people are not trustworthy. It's like pretty much everyone has the skills to do that by seeing and analyzing such a great amount of malware. But in the community, it's all about trust. And once someone has shown that they have intention to work for the other side, they are no longer trustworthy. So don't do it. It's definitely very possible to sell it, and there's a very good market. I think even yesterday, I saw some numbers. You can search for price lists. So there are price lists for paper install schemes, for getting a credit card, for getting a Trojan that's doing several different things. There's some let's say simpler Trojans that are sold for a couple $100. There are some really sophisticated ones, such as Harbor. For a couple of $1,000, you are getting a kit which consists of bot builder. So we will be building your own malicious Trojan, which then you have to distribute. There are also services which the attackers are providing for that by offering their botnets to install malware on the affected other malware on the affected computers. These guys, it's a normal black business. They offer support for their malware, 24-hour support. So they're really serious with this stuff, and they're making a lot of money, as I've shown in this presentation. So unfortunately, their business is going too well.
I'm afraid time has left, but we would like to say thank you very much for your presentation.